Okay, picture this. It's 11:30 in the morning. You finally carved out some time for that deep work.
That mythical block of time.
Right. The time where you actually do the things you get paid to do. So you sit down, you have your coffee, you open up the document, you take a deep breath, and then ping.
Oh, no.
A new email from a client. You try to ignore it. 2 minutes later, ping. Another one. Then a correction to the last email. Then a question about the correction.
And by noon, you've got 17 emails from the same person. None of them make any sense. The subject lines are all urgent, and you're just exhausted before you've even written a single word.
It's the freelancer's nightmare. We've all been there. It is death by 1,000 cuts. But then you've got the flip side, which is quiet, but somehow even more stressful.
The opposite extreme, yeah. The void. You send a really crucial question, you need an answer to move forward, and you just get nothing.
Radio silence.
Total radio silence. For weeks. Until, the day before the launch, when suddenly their hair is on fire and they're wondering why you haven't performed some kind of miracle in the vacuum they created.
It is maddening. And honestly, it's not just an annoyance, it's a huge business risk. And that's why today on the Deep Dive, we are tackling this head on. We're unpacking an article from Stella Pop called How to Deal with a Client Who is Bad at Communicating. We're going to move past just venting, which is fun, and get straight to strategy. How do we save your sanity and your bottom line?
And we really have to stress the bottom line part of that, because I think we tend to treat poor communication as like a soft skill issue.
Right, just a personality clash to deal with?
Exactly. But the source material hits us with a statistic right away that is, frankly, terrifying. 66% of people have ditched a company solely because of poor communication.
66%. So 2/3 of your potential business just walks out the door.
Gone. Not because the work was bad, not because the price was wrong, but because the emails were a mess, or the updates were confusing, or they just didn't feel like you were on the same page.
Wow.
It's a massive retention problem. If you're leaking 2/3 of your clients that way, you don't have a marketing problem, you have a systems problem.
That is huge. But here's the part that I don't get. If everyone knows it's a deal breaker, why is it so common? You'd think businesses would have figured this out by now.
Well, this is where the research gets really interesting. There's this massive gap in perception. The data shows that 99% of consumers say effective communication is crucial.
Okay, so basically everyone agrees. Every single person.
The demand is universal, but only 7% of businesses rate themselves as excellent at it.
Hold on. 99% want it, but only 7% think they're actually delivering. That's a monumental disconnect.
It's a chasm. And it's just that while we love to blame the client, they're so difficult, the problem is often systemic. It goes both ways. But before we all spiral into self-blame, the article has a really comforting point.
Okay, good.
It points out that these difficult clients usually aren't doing it out of spite.
Right. They're not waking up in the morning, twisting a mustache, thinking, how can I ruin my consultant's Tuesday?
Exactly. They don't have a vendetta against your efficiency. The source says they're probably just disorganized or completely overwhelmed in their own job, or, and this is the big one, they just don't have a clue what they actually need.
That is such a relief, actually. It reframes the whole thing from being personal to just being chaos. And chaos, in theory, can be managed.
Right.
So let's get into the nitty-gritty. The article breaks down two very specific archetypes of bad communicators. And I guarantee as we describe them, you're going to see a client's face in your mind.
Oh, absolutely. Everyone has one for each of these.
So first up, we have the vanishing act.
Yeah.
I call them the ghost. Who is this person?
The ghost is a fascinating and deeply frustrating creature. The source describes them as being basically allergic to decision-making.
Allergic to decisions.
Oh, yeah.
I love that. It implies like a physical reaction to having to choose between option A and option B.
It really fits, doesn't it? These are the people who just go dark. Yeah. You send an email into the abyss, you leave a voicemail, nothing.
It's like throwing a penny in a well and never hearing the splash.
Yes. But here's the thing. They aren't gone forever. That would almost be easier.
Right. If they ghosted you for good, you could just cut your losses and move on.
Exactly. The real defining trait of the ghost isn't just the silence. It's the panic after the silence. They vanish for weeks, and then, 24 hours before the deadline, they reappear in a state of absolute emergency.
And their emergency becomes your emergency.
Instantly, they expect you to do 3 weeks of work in 3 hours, all because they wasted the timeline.
Okay, that is incredibly stressful. So that's type A, the ghost. Then we have the polar opposite, type B, The article calls them the over-communicator, but I think the fire hose is a much better visual.
The fire hose is the client who treats your inbox like, I don't know, a stream of consciousness diary, or maybe a therapy session.
Yes, the person who sends an email, thinks of one more thing, sends another email, then calls you to tell you they sent the emails.
It's constant updates. But the real problem isn't just the volume, it's the volatility. The direction changes constantly.
Oh, yeah.
Email 1 says, let's go with blue. 10 minutes later, a new email. Actually red. Then another one, why isn't this green yet?
It feels like you're drowning in information, but none of it is the right information. It's just motion, not progress.
Precisely. They're confusing activity with productivity. They think if they're talking at you, then work must be happening.
Okay, so when you look at these two, the ghost and the fire hose, they seem completely opposite. One gives you nothing, the other gives you way too much. My first instinct is you need two totally different strategies. Yeah. But the source says that's wrong.
It does, and this is such a key insight. The article argues that while the symptoms are different, the disease is the same. They both need the same foundational fix.
That's surprising. So what's the shared root cause?
It all comes down to a lack of structure. The root cause for both is a lack of clear boundaries and expectations from day one. The ghost disappears because they don't know when they need to reply or what happens if they don't. The fire hose sprays you because they don't know how or when to give feedback properly.
So nature abhors a vacuum. If we don't set the rules for them, they just make up their own. And their rules are terrible.
That is it, exactly. We leave a void and they fill it with their own chaos.
All right, so let's talk about setting those rules. This gets us into what the article calls the preemptive strike. It says we make a huge mistake before the project even really begins. What is it?
The biggest mistake service providers make is assuming the client knows how to be a client. We assume that because we know professional norms like, don't email at 3 a.m. and expect an immediate reply, that they know them too.
And the reality check is they absolutely do not.
They do not. And why would they? Every business works differently. So the solution the article suggests is creating a project overview.
Okay, but I have to play devil's advocate. Is this just another page in the contract? Because let's be honest, no one reads the contract.
That's a crucial distinction. And no, this is not something you bury in the legalese. This isn't about liability. It needs to be a simple, clear, standalone document. Maybe even just a dedicated kickoff email that spells out the rules of engagement.
A how to work with me user manual.
Basically, yeah. It's an operational document, not a legal one.
So what specifically needs to be in there? Because I feel like just saying, please be respectful is way too vague.
Way too vague. You need specific operational boundaries. The source lists a few must-haves. First, working hours.
It seems obvious, but in the age of smartphones, clients think awake means working.
Right. You have to say, I work 9 to 5 Eastern time. If you email me at 7 p.m., you'll hear from me the next morning. Second, and this is the big one, response times.
How so?
You have to tell them how fast you will respond. Like, I reply within 1 business day. That alone stops the fire hose from sending follow-ups because they know the clock hasn't run out yet.
It stops their anxiety loop.
Exactly. But you also have to set expectations for their response time. To keep this project on track, I need your feedback within 48 hours.
That makes sense. It's reciprocal. What else?
You need to outline the approval process. Who has to sign off? Is it just your contact, or is there a boss who's going to swoop in at the last second? And maybe most importantly for the ghost, you have to spell out what happens if they go radio silent.
Ooh, I like that. So you tell them up front, if you disappear, these are the consequences.
Yes. You might say, if I don't get feedback in 3 days, the project timeline pauses and the launch date moves. Or maybe there's a restart fee.
That's powerful. It connects their behavior directly to something they care about, like the budget or the deadline.
The whole point here is that clear boundaries prevent most of these disasters before they even start. You're basically training the client on how to be a good client for you.
I love that idea, training the client. But let's be real. That's great for a new client. But what about everyone listening right now who's thinking, great, but I'm already 3 months deep with a nightmare? We need some tactical systems for the trenches.
We do. We need tourniquets. And the source gives some excellent ones for when you're already in the thick of it.
Okay, let's start with the ghost. You're waiting on an approval. The deadline's coming up. They're not replying. What do you do?
This is one of my favorite tactics from the article. It's the silence equals approval clause.
Silence equals approval. That sounds bold. How does that work?
It is bold, but it's necessary for chronic non-responders. Usually we send these polite passive emails like, let me know what you think when you get a chance.
Right, which gives them all the power. They can take 2 weeks, and you can't do anything about it.
Exactly. You have to change the phrasing. You say, here is the draft. If I don't hear back from you by Friday at 4 p.m., I am proceeding with option A.
Oh, wow. So you're removing the bottleneck yourself. You're basically saying the train is leaving the station, with or without you.
Exactly. It forces a decision by leveraging their fear of the wrong thing happening. If they really hate option A, you better believe they will reply.
Right. Suddenly they find the time because they don't want the wrong version going out.
Immediately. But if they're just busy and they trust you, they let it pass, and you get to keep working. You don't lose momentum. It turns their inaction into your permission.
That's a total game changer. But I bet that feels a little scary to type the first time.
It does. It can feel aggressive, but it's not. It's assertive. It's just good project management.
Okay, so that handles the ghost. What about the fire hose? The 50 emails a day person. How do we turn that off without being rude?
For the fire hose, the key word is consolidation. You have to stop the chaos. The strategy is moving them to a strict schedule, like weekly check-ins.
So you're basically saying save it for the meeting.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
But you have to give them a place to put all that anxious energy. So you set up a shared document, a Google Doc, a Trello board, whatever.
Okay.
And you tell them, I want to make sure I don't miss any of your great ideas. So instead of emailing them one by one, please add them to the shared list. We'll go through the whole thing on our call every Tuesday.
I see. So you're not ignoring them. You're just batch processing them.
You are batch processing their anxiety. They get the thought out of their head so they feel better, but it stays out of your inbox until you are ready to deal with it all at once.
That sounds so much more efficient. It lets you see the whole picture instead of just reacting to fragments.
Right. And then there's one more tactic that applies to both types, which is channel switching.
Yes. This is so smart. We get stuck in our ways, right? We just keep emailing a client who clearly never checks their email.
It's the definition of insanity. If email isn't working, try to text. Some people ignore email but will answer a text in 5 seconds. Others hate the phone but are great in a project management tool like Asana.
So adapt the channel to the client. If you want a different response, use a different medium.
Precisely. Don't just keep banging your head against the same wall.
Okay. So we've tried the preemptive strike. We've tried silence equals approval. We've tried consolidation and channel switching. And it's still a nightmare. What happens now?
Now we have to talk about the hard truth.
The breakup. Firing the client.
It's the thing everyone is afraid to do. But sometimes they are just not worth the hassle. And this is where we have to look at what the source calls data.
Data. What do you mean?
The perspective is that if you've set clear expectations, you've adjusted your methods, you've communicated the impact of their behavior, and nothing has changed. That lack of change is data.
It's not just a feeling anymore. It's proof that it's not going to get better.
Correct. It's a fact.
So what are the specific red flags that tell us, okay, this is over? Because it's hard to walk away from the money.
It is, but the source lists behaviors that shift this from a communication issue to a respect issue. And that distinction is vital. A communication issue can be fixed. A respect issue cannot.
Respect issue. That hits differently. What are the signs?
Repeatedly missing agreed-upon deadlines, scope creep, constantly asking for more work and then acting surprised when you mention the budget. And of course, treating your work hours like a vague suggestion.
The 9 p.m. Sunday phone call.
Exactly. When those things happen after you've set clear boundaries, they're signaling that they do not respect your time or your business. And that's toxic.
So how do you actually have that conversation, the come to Jesus talk? How do you do it without getting a bad review?
The advice is to be clear, direct, and unemotional. No apologies, no passive aggression, no sorry to bother you, but I feel like...
No feelings, just facts.
Just facts. State the reality of the situation. The source gives a great script. It's something like, for this partnership to work, I need X by Y time. If that isn't possible, we need to discuss whether this timeline still makes sense or if we should pause.
Or if we should pause. That is very polite code for I am about to quit.
It is. It puts the ball in their court, but it firmly establishes your non-negotiable condition. You're saying, here's the standard, can you meet it or not?
And what's the usual outcome?
Sometimes that conversation is the reset they needed. They didn't realize you were at a breaking point and they shape up.
The best case scenario.
Right. But even if it leads to a breakup, even if they say they can't meet the standard and you part ways, that is still a positive outcome.
Because it's better than drowning in what the article calls toxic soup.
Exactly. You're freeing up your time and energy for clients who actually respect you. You can't catch a good client if your hands are full with a bad one.
That's a really powerful way to frame it. Okay, let's recap this whole journey.
Let's do it.
We started by identifying the two main villains, the ghost, who vanishes, and the fire hose, who floods you with chaos.
Then we talked about the foundation, the project overview, setting those clear boundaries on hours, response times, and consequences before you start.
Then we got tactical. For the ghost, you use silence equals approval. For the fire hose, you consolidate communication into weekly check-ins.
And finally, you have to recognize the data. If none of the systems work, it's not a communication issue anymore, it's a respect issue. And you have to be willing to have that hard conversation.
It all sounds so logical, but I know it's hard to do when you're afraid of losing the client.
It is, but there's a final takeaway from the source that really stuck with me. It's that good systems create a path of least resistance. And the quote was, "If you are working harder to maintain the relationship than you are working on the actual project, the system is broken."
That is the litmus test right there. If the relationship is harder than the actual work, something is fundamentally wrong.
Exactly. Your energy should be going into the deliverable, not the email chain.
So I want to leave our listeners with one final thought to mull over today. We've talked a lot about bad clients, but take a look at your current difficult clients. How many of their so-called bad behaviors are actually just a reflection of boundaries that you forgot to set in the first place?
That is a tough question, but a really important one.
It really is. Sometimes the call is coming from inside the house. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Hopefully your inbox is a little less scary tomorrow.
Indeed. Until next time.
See you then.